Hey, it's Chris. What are we talking about today? IV Studios' latest game. We're talking Tend. This is a heavy roll and write, if you will. I've got 3 different boards in front of me, pads of varying degrees of management, resource allocation, and unlocking. What do you need to know? Brief overview, gameplay, final thoughts on it. Are you ready? Let's go. So this is IV Studios' foray into the roll and write style of things. I've got my markers. We're ready to go. As you can see in front of me, I have several different areas I'm going to be trying to manage on a turn-by-turn, phase-by-phase, round-by-round, scoring manipulation via the use of unlocking resources manner. Without going into rules minutia here, let me give you the overview of each of these 5 different areas that you are going to be dealing with on a game-by-game, round-by-round, phase-by-phase basis. You've got 2 of your main boards that you are crossing off, allocating resources for, and drawing on. You've got a conversion chart board over here. You've got the main interactive manipulation via actions board there with turn-by-turn actions that are going to be available to you. And then you also have, and this is going to be the most divisive element by far, the scratch off. Yes, it's a scratch off. Disclaimer, there will be some sort of app involvement if you don't want scratch offs or you have concerns about that. We'll talk about that at the end of the video. But the top is your woods area, which you are chopping, and the bottom is your mines, which, well, you're mining. And as you're going through, you are using your metal piece here to scratch off squares that are going to then unlock resources, paths, and upgrades along the way. So you're doing that through a phase-by-phase 12-round system where you score 3 times at the end of Season 1, 2, and then finally at the end of the game at Season 3. That's where this top board is going to play the majority of. As you can see, now that I've got them in the right order, Season 1's end objective, Season 2's scoring end objective, and Season 3's objective. And these are all going to correlate to different areas on those maps. Project bonuses. When you finish completing a project, you're going to get 3 points. And this means that when there's a dividing line, that is considered 1. But if there's no horizontal line, it is all considered. So if there was no horizontal line, it could be 6 right there, or it could be 9, or it could be 12 as the full completion. And so 3 points at the end of Season 1 for that. Muncher, Season 2, gain 4 points for each energy bar collected. That is part of one of your maps, which is going to require 3 coins to unlock each energy bar. Energy bars give you 2 actions to be able to use for anything. And then the last one here, the Season 3, gain 20 points for completely filling Section 2 of your cargo manifest. Your cargo manifest, again, is represented by this board, where you're going to be allocating resources, which are one of the main ways in which you're going to be scoring points at the end of the game as you allocate rows and columns, not only to get additional actions, but additional points based on what's available at the bottom. And surprisingly, you're looking at this, whereas certain ones do not score any in this column or this column, but some score double in this column. Now, when you flip to the next board below, it actually changes the dynamics of what icons score in what areas. So that is one thing that differs from a game-to-game basis. But these are going to be variable in terms of selection at the beginning of the game. They get allocated to this board up here, and there is quite the variety of these. In fact, well, here you can see how many of each of them there are. So you only choose one of them per game, so you can already see the highly amount of variability that's going to be present in terms of what may be necessary or what's going to be scoring on a turn-by-turn or, well, season-by-season basis. Similarly, what's going to happen is a massive amount of variability in the actions that are going to be available to you. But these actions, again, dependent on what season it is, are only going to come into play part of the time, because as you can see in front of me, I've got 5 action spots here that are going to be available on a round-by-round basis. You get to take 2 of these actions, any combination thereof, on your turn, and this is simultaneous play, so everyone is doing this phase of the game together. That being said, before I go any further into the actions, let me take a half step back and tell you the phases of the game. The first phase is basically the neighbor phase, where you have 2 neighbor cards that are represented right here that are sort of actually reminding me of Quest Kids, because you're going to have these face up next to your board and to your left and to your right, meaning if your neighbor does something, you may get their card or you may give them your card. What this means is if you gather either of these resources on either of these cards, you can then give your neighbor this card. And at the beginning of the next round, you get a bonus. You get to mark off a square or 2 on the bottom of your track right here. And these spots are going to give you harder to get resources that are very valuable in some of the other areas that are much more upgradable and difficult to obtain for, well, advancement and upgrades overall from a mechanical standpoint, but also from a scoring standpoint. And so then the first phase is you're giving these out and, getting the bonuses that previously may have been allocated, during the previous rounds. And so then if you have one that's empty, you draw and replenish. I believe it's draw 2 and, take 1. And there is, again, a very thick deck of these available to you. Second phase is straightforward. It's that scoring that I just mentioned if you just finish those seasons at the start of the round. So you're going to score those, allocate them to your cargo right below your cargo manifest here, and then go on to then the reset sort of phase that's going on. Because what's going to happen is you're going to use these actions and you're going to clear them off of your board in the first place. And then this is where you're going to put them out. You draw 3 from the top of the starter actions, you place them into the locations, and you can see you're going to get a variety of things. So then what you've got here, actually, I've sort of alluded to what's going to happen here. And so you're going to have 2 of these actions that are unique to this round and potentially even this season. But in terms of helping you strategize, not only are these going to be the ones available, you flip up the top card on each of these decks right here, and so you can see what's coming, because these are slightly different. These have tops and bottoms, meaning you take the top action, and if you meet the middle condition, you get the bottom action as well. So you might not be able to get it this time, but you might look ahead to this action there and get it. Also, some of these are going to be slightly different iconography than what's going to be available on the starter actions. If I can find one here, for example, you'll see that some of these on the season actions are actually different in terms of the mining. This is the upgraded mining action. This is the regular mining action. So they are going to be different in some regards in that way. Then you take 2 of your actions. You have tending, you have fishing, you have mining, you have chopping down wood, or you have also these little coins, which all, again, are going to correspond to the areas on this map in the first place. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be going to each of those areas that correspond, and you're going to be taking said action. Mining and chopping are going to be on the scratch off, and you're going to be using that and scratching off a square, getting resources. Now, in all of these aspects, you're going to be gathering resources, whether it is fishing, tending, mining, or chopping. And you have several different things that you can do with those resources. Mainly, though, the main mechanism is, unlike a lot of other games, you don't store your resources with this. You actually spend them immediately. And you can spend them in several different ways. You can convert them into other resources. You can convert them into spaces on the previously mentioned cargo manifest via the use of this universal, cost board. Meaning if I get this resource, I can get this money, or I can get this many spaces of this color onto my cargo manifest. And every single resource on the board or that can be obtained is on here. And you can see on this corporate commissary how many resources there are. You've got all your things that you can grow, you've got the things that you can mine, you've got the things that you can chop, and then you've got all of your other resources here that can be obtained, special blueprints, as well as the fishing. And so all of these will give different icons. Now, the one special rule with the cargo manifest is as you're putting these colors down into these areas, you can't have colors touch, same colors. So you can't have a blue touch another blue that are separately laying down. Some of those blues might be 2 or 3 across, but you have to have another color in between them when you do them in separate turns or separate actions. And so as you fill them, if you fill a row, you get those same actions that are going to be available to you on a turn-by-turn basis. that is the main gist of that phase. I'll go into more detail of what the specifics are and how you're interacting, because several of these areas are slightly different. And then also there's some nuance because you're going to have regularly uncovered areas on this, and you're also going to have areas that are colored in the background of the actual square, which starts to build up the upgraded actions that are going to be available to you here, along with the resources that you may get from the spots in the first place. A little bit of spoilers here, just so you're aware. This is what it's starting to look like, and you're going to make your way down across and down across here, because not only if you're uncovering these resources, but you're going to be utilizing either the regular action, which is 1 per square up here, or you're going to have 2 per the same action, the upgraded version of that symbol, to be able to get below this line. And you can start to see that some of these are purple in the background opposed to white, and the purple ones not only get you the resource, but they upgrade on that previous chart that I just showed you right there. And you cross off an additional resource there, so you can start to see the combo chaining that's going to go along. Similarly, the mines have stuff down here where the yellow background. And the thing with these scratch offs is I can show you this one because they're all different. You can also see that there are some thick black lines between some of these areas as well, meaning you can't go that way. You always have to start at the top and work your way down and adjacent in the pattern or the availability that's there. And each of these side parts tell you what resources are available potentially along the whole manner. Tending and fishing are completely different. Tending, you're actually going to have an area of farming over here that you get to put little squiggles on, if you can see right there in the upper corner, that allows you then to place the dice. Those represent the 4 different types of plants that you can grow, or the 3 different types of animals that are available to you. Plants need the little squigglies with the growth. Animals need to be boxed in with using the equal signs, and both of these can be made using down here, these conversions, or the tending action, which allows you to either plant, water a crop, and the adjacent ones next to that crop, or plow, which allows you to put 4 more of these little tildes down in the first place. And so all of these dice, the 3 animal dice, as well as the 4 plant dice here, they all have numbers on the sides. And we'll use the pumpkin here for the biggest example that you can see easily. You start with the lowest one, and if you water it, it goes up to the next number. And that also happens during that growth phase prior to the actions as well. And then when it reaches its final, it turns white in the background, and it has one of 3 different elements. One is that you discard it as a whole and get the resource that is there. 2 is that it just stays there and nothing happens with it. If I can actually hold it here, and you can see the 2 on this yellow-sided die right there. And then there's also dice that just get replenished and go back down to their original starting value in, I believe, one of the animals here. This one. And so those are going to be allocated on there, and if they're adjacent, anything adjacent to the one you choose to water also goes up by another number. Fishing is a whole different area, and again, fishing is upgradable just like the others. And you can see that if you fish, you roll actually a black and a white die, and you go to the column and the row and correspondingly gather the resource there, but you'll also notice there are some blank ones. In order to mitigate that, you can upgrade your fishing icons and your lures, which give you larger patterns, but still only gathering 1 resource, or lures give you the ability to gather more than 1 resource. Energy bars, like I mentioned, give you 2 extra actions of all of the other ones that are available. And then again, a few upgrades over here to the tending and the availability of the animals over here. So that is the basic game in a nutshell. Those are some of the dynamics. We didn't talk about some of the project and some of the other things that you'll be able to unlock. Projects in order to get additional resources or convert into resources, as well as badges to get you victory points, again, as a main way of scoring at the end of the game, including ways to double up your badge points with, say, the Wood Explorer there as you're going along. And then the other last thing before we get into some gameplay example is in the mines, there is one special geode that is available that will give you a different area to mine in this fact, in terms of the die rolling similar to the fish. And then some of those other areas, like if you get to the bottom of the mining area or the wooded area, it says that you get to the bottom to unlock lake fishing or grotto fishing, or you fill the broken bridge on your sheet here and they unlock the river fishing. And so you can see then you would place this up, and it has better fish, better resources, and better, well, placement potentially across the board. So that being said, let me show you some of the gameplay and what a turn-by-turn or round-by-round situation looks like, and then my final thoughts. So I've got everything set up for me just to show you the beginning of a round or two here. You can see I've got the action board set up. I've got season 1, 2, and 3 objectives. I've got the next round's actions that are going to be available when the first round gets over. So I can see already what I'm needing to plan for. I've got a fresh scratch off here as well for the mines and the woods. And then I've got my 2 main boards that I'll be filling out along with my geode and my other areas of fishing. We've just set those aside. Commissary is right out of view. We'll pull that up when we need to. And so the first phase of things is actually the neighbor phase. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to grab 2 of these neighbor cards and you're going to put them on your left and your right, meaning in the multiplayer game, if you have one of these resources, you can gift them to that person on that side, and you mark off, I believe, this many bonus squares, 1 or 2, on the lower left or the lower right of your sheet. And these again are going to get you resources that are actually a lot harder to get when you get further up this track than a lot of other ways to get them in the first place. In the smaller number games, in like the 2-player game, well, the person on your left is the person on your right. So you do both. Or in the solo game, you actually discard this and you mark off X many spots in general. And then at the beginning of the phase, this is when you're going to be receiving the bonus for that in your neighbor phase. When somebody has gifted it to you, then you would then take the bonus at this point and then replenish if you had gifted to other people. In the first round, you obviously haven't done that, so then we move on to the next phase. And coincidentally, then, you also don't do a whole lot in the first round in the second phase as well, because that's the scoring phase. You would be doing the scoring for the season here, gain 3 points for each completed project. And you can see, you know, I've got my projects board over here, and that's going to be taking part of it, you know, and scoring it at that point. So how many of those projects or how many of those areas do I have sort of done in the first place? Setup phase, again, I skipped that because that's this portion of things, getting the action cards out from the pile for the generic, moving down the ones that you saw previously last round into this round. Then we're getting into the meat and core of this. Growth, if you had any plants over here on the growth area of your map, you would be turning those dice, you would be increasing them by the 1 to a 2 or 2 to a, you know, white side of things potentially, or even 3, and you're going to be reaping what rewards you may be getting off of that. That's the growth phase. And then when the growth phase is done, now you get to the main, what you're doing, everybody doing this, because, you know, those 2 phases, the growth phase and the task action phase right now, are simultaneous. You can all be flipping your dice over here, and then you're looking at these actions and you're saying, okay, I have tending, I have fishing, I have tending, I've got, you know, chopping or mining, or I've got just 2 coins that I can mark off. Now, these both have conditionals down here. If I have 1+ completed column in the cargo manifest, so if I had a whole column in any of these cargo manifests, I could do the bottom action, which then would get me 3 additional coins. Or if I have 2 projects completed here, I could fill in any project box as well. So again, giving me additional ways of mitigating, gaining extras along those lines. Now you'll also notice, I'm going to sneak peek here, that this chopping card right here, you'll see that that is that axe. If you look at the regular axe here with the chopping, it's that one. So this one would actually give me the ability to chop below the line on the scratch off. And so normally I couldn't scratch anything down here with the regular one that was in the regular action pile. But if I choose the other one, I could go down here and I could utilize that. But you have to start from the top and work your way down. So I don't think that's actually a possibility right now. But if I had already connected here, then it could be used to cross the divide there, potentially. We'll shuffle these back up for the sake of the gameplay here, so they're not totally known from that aspect. Tending, again, if you look at your board, tending allows you to do one of 3 different things. I can plant a crop if I have enough area to plant a crop. I can water, or I can place the little tildes, which is going to, you know, till the soil and allow me to plant crops in the future. I can fish, or I can do the, you know what, let's do the mining. Let's do a scratch off. Let me show you what the mining looks like here. So we choose any one in the top row of the mines here. You can see what 3 potential resources I'm going to be gathering. And let's just go straight along this path right here. Let's scratch this off. And this is the trickiest part. You got to be very careful, because you'll start to see the edges of other boxes and you can kind of cheat there if you see what the background color is. So that just means I get another mining. So I don't get to upgrade because there's no background color. I don't see a black line, so we'll go down below here and we'll get the next one. And now I've got a blue ore here. And so now I can get my blue ore. I can fill off my blue ore, finding one of these spots that now has this matching blue ore. And there's a couple down here for the equipment upgrades. There's a couple down here for the groundskeeping, as well as for the broken bridge. And the broken bridge is going to allow me to unlock river fishing. Or, well, I can't get any of the fishing upgrades. So you know what? Let's go for the broken bridge. So I cross that one off. And then that is my first action. And you can also keep track of it on the bottom of your player board here, as I did the mining. So we'll just put an M down there so you can keep track of which actions you've taken and what round it is that way. Now I could potentially do anything else. I get the 2 of those. I could do the fishing. You know what? Let's show you how fishing works here. So what you do is you take your little pond fishing emblem here in the center of the board, and you can start to see the rows and the columns there. I take my dice, and I have 5 white and 3 black. And so that is going to correlate here to 5 white and 3 black. I have this little blue guy right here, if you can see him, and that is going to correlate to a fish. Now, those fish resources are good for mainly one thing, and that's the commissary. The commissary here, you can see that I have this little guy, which is this little guy. So I could sell him immediately for 1 coin value, or I could draw him in the manifest for 1 little blue there as well. Which now, comparatively to this card, which would have given us 2 gold, that's not nearly as good. He's only getting us 1, and I just circled him there so you could see which one it was. But I could have said, unlocked this with 1 of these gold coins, or I could draw it in the cargo manifest. I need to be careful though, because I don't want to place it in this column, because this column is going to get 0 points for any of the blue. So you know what, let's draw him in the manifest here for the sake of doing it, and let's draw him in the mining action row. So let's just draw him right there. We'll just use that for the generic description. So now I've taken my 2 actions. I marked that at the bottom of the board that I fished, and then it's rinse and repeat for the next round. So then you go back to the beginning, like I just said, like I cycled through previously. You go through the neighbors, then you go through the growth phase, then you go through the setup. Well, the setup is these 3 are getting discarded. We put those over there. The season 1s go to here. You can see season 1s go there. We flip these up so you can see what's coming up next there. And then we take the top 3 action cards here, chopping, and mining, and then we have another mining or fishing and a tending or a bottom chop there. If I have a trellis built, a trellis is one of the other things you can unlock on the side over here. One of your growth in terms of the plants needs a trellis in order to be planted, and so that's an option. Or if I have 2 mining levels and river fishing unlocked, I would get extra actions there as well. And what that means is if you have 2 mining levels, if I have 2 of these mining levels that have been unlocked based on the background colors of the mining squares that I'm unlocking, similarly with the chopping, the purple backgrounds going up here, and that's all your levels there. So you know what, let's just go mining again. We'll go mining again so we can scratch off here. Now, as you can see right there, I had to scratch a little bit further over, and this is where this is tricky, right? There's a black line right there very subtly, meaning I can't go to the right. So we're going to try and go left here if I can, and you can see, okay, now this is what the background yellow looks like. This is, again, another mining key, but that's also level 1 on my miner track, if you will. So then I go back to this one, I mark off, I get a coin there, and you know what? Let's go for the coin right here to try and increase the catch area that we're going to need for the fishing rod. If you can see that, I marked it off right down there. So then I have another mining action, though, based on that. And let's make sure I can go to the left, or, I'll go to the left again, and I get another one of those mining ores right there. And so again, if you want to sell the ore, you can do that as well. It gets you 1 mining aspect of that, or I can cross it off on one of the other areas that you can kind of see on the map. And so again, I don't really see anything on the map that I'm really interested in. I didn't really talk about this, but you can actually upgrade your actions to have the ability to do them below as an extra action as well, with the chops, the mines, and the tending. So I could start using it for one of those as well. You can see that those require a lot more coins, and then also little map upgrades. So I could do that, or I could just try and sell it and put it in another column or row over in my manifest. And I've already told you that manifest is going to be how we're scoring. So you know what, right now I'd probably rather upgrade something. So let's go back over here. Let's go down here. Let's go to the, you know what, we're doing a lot of mining right now. So we'll mark off this ore down here at the bottom, just out of sight again, right there. And so I marked that one off. And that was our first action, all of those combined. And so now, without completely screwing everything up and messing everything up, we got to take a second action. I could start chopping, or I could do a second mining action right here. Now, if I was lucky enough, and I don't have the river fishing unlocked, so that wouldn't work. But you know what? We could start chopping. Let's start chopping right here. Let's use one of the chopping actions, and let's take a chopping action, and let's start the same column here. And so that gets me another chopping action there. So we'll go down, and now we've got a wood there. So again, we can unlock the wood. We can go and try and fix some of the broken bridge, or we can go for this lure. And you know what? We're going to go for that lure. And so we'll mark that off. And now then we've taken our two actions. We can subsequently mark them. We did what? Mining and chopping there. And so then that round is pretty much done. If, again, I don't have any of these resources, I didn't plant anything, I didn't tend, and I didn't get either of these fish. So I can't really do anything with those right now for my social helping other neighborly rewards. But I can start to see, okay, what was coming up this next round? 2 gold, and if I've already collected 1 energy bar, that would have required 3 gold. Then I could execute one of the 4 main actions. So if I was smart, I probably would have done that. I probably would have grabbed, something that would have given me energy this round. Or if I have an upgraded tool, I get an extra map blueprint there after taking the actions at the top. Again, we'll rinse and repeat. We'll move these down. We'll flip these over. We'll move these 3 discarded out to the discard pile. And then we have fishing, mining, and the 2 energy again. So I could actually do that. So you know what? Let's just do this, right? Let's do this round as something slightly different so you can see a different combo situation. Because that actually, each energy bar is going to collect me extra points at the end of Season 2. So we grab the 2 right there, and that will give me 2 coins there. And then I'll grab the 2 coins from this one, and that gives me 1. I circle this to show I haven't used it, and you put a line through it indicating you get an extra action in each time. And then I have 1 more coin, and so let's get that fishing rod almost done there. So I've got 3 of the 4 fishing upgrades, or 3 of the 4 icons for the fishing upgrade. And again, for the fishing upgrade, it changes the size of the fishing area instead of just 1 spot, but you still only gather 1 resource from 1 of those 5 different spaces that are available, or even 1 of the 9 on the bottom one. But now, because I took the second one as this action, I have an energy bar collected. I get to execute one of the 4 main actions as well. And I really kind of need a coin here to get this fishing upgrade. That would be very nice. But I could also spend my action, additionally to get more energy bars. 2 uses once owned. So you know what? Why don't we spend 1 to go back here to the mining and see if we can get the mining taken care of. So let's go down here if we can. We'll scratch off down here. And this scratch off, that would be very delicate not to do it. So again, I got a blue ore there, which is actually, unfortunately, the one I marked earlier. So we won't count that. We'll do that backwards. And then I got an additional, we'll just say it was the stone, because it was the stone that I messed up last time. And so again, the stone doesn't really give me anything on my board that I'm really looking forward to. But I could use it to pay for the cost of a fence or 2 fences if I wanted in the middle right there. Or, you know what, let's see, is there anything else that we can kind of use it for right now? No. So let's go over here. The commissary, so it gets me, again, it gets me 1 gold, or it gets me a mining action. And so let's see, is there anything? Oh, you know what? I need that gold. So let's sell it. We get the gold, we get this. And so now we have this fishing upgrade. So now if I want to fish, I can do that. And so let me show you what the fishing looks like. And let's go back to this fishing area here. Let's roll our dice. So we can see, as you know, one of our energy bar actions. So I cross off 1 of the little 2 areas right there. I put a line through it. And so let's go back here. And we have a wild. Ooh, we got the wild and we got the 5. So I could get basically anything in this, let's see, 5. I could basically get anything in this column right here. But then I have the area that gets me a little cross like this. And so it would be centered from something there. So I really only have the options of these white ones or these blue ones. So that's where some of these other areas that you can fish are going to be a lot better, because they're going to have a lot of the better fish when you're trying to sell them on the commissary. And there is a 2 blue fish and there is a 2 gold reward for that one. But the problem is the only thing I've drawn right now on my cargo manifest is also blue. So I can't place it next to that if I want to. But what I could do is I could start working towards another row or column. And so I could start maybe, right here and right here. So as long as I put something in between it right there, I'm fine. And you know what? Let's do one more thing here. Let's see if we can mine one more time. Let's just use that energy bar completely up. I'm not sure if you can use 2 of them in one round. I don't remember that actually. But for the sake of this example, we're going to do it. And we're going to go right next door here if we can. And we're going to see what we've got there. And so we've got, the yellow bar. Now, you know what? This one was also yellow too. So I forgot to mark my mining track there, because the mining track would have given me another coin in addition right there, as well as now I have a yellow bar. So then the yellow bar then again could be utilized for the equipment upgrades over here. So now I've got 2 of the pieces up here for the equipment upgrades as well. And I still have the gold from the mining upgrade. So I could try and get like a lure over here if I really wanted to, or I could just mix off one of those. So that is how you're going to be doing it. Now then I would go again, I would take all of these cards off, you shuffle them up after you've used them all, you lay 3 out, these 2 go to the side, and so we then pull these 2 down as the next, and you could start to see 1 trellis built or 2 mining levels. So this would be really good because I could mine and have 2 mining levels, and then I could get one of these resources. Well, these resources, this guy right here, this plant is actually what I need to get the neighbor bonus. That neighbor bonus for the one on my left would be then giving me this little wood over here. So then you can start to see how things are going to combo. And again, the actions in season 2 just get a little bit better. You can see a little bit more variety there, but you also need a little bit more in the middle, because not only do you have to have 2 complete columns here in the cargo manifest, but look how much more reward you get. And here you have to have that many tilled soil, 10 tilled soil and 20 fence spaces. You start off with something like 4 tilled soil and like 10 fence spaces, but it's, it's still a full main action if you're going that route heavily. And this is gardener, so if you're tending, it's gonna, want to have more of this. So it works well thematically there. And then if you go down to the last of season 3s, you can start to see again what you'd be having here with one of these actions, the upgraded action 2 right there. And if you have 3 columns, 3 money on one of the actions, and then if you have 8+ mining levels here, you get another of the main actions. So that's the game in a nutshell. Again, I didn't complete any of the projects, but that would have happened at the end of season 1, the energy bars for season 2, and then the last area for, the whole filled section 2 of the cargo manifest. So if I would have been doing that well, we could have done that as an addition, sort of trying to fill up things as we went along there. So now let's go to my final thoughts. Pros and cons. Who is this right for? Who's not going to like this? Initially, I was a little concerned when I looked at this, and then I looked at this, and I said, holy cow, this is by far and away the most stuff going on in a roll and write that I have ever played. There's definitely ones that are heavier out there, but there's just a lot going on in terms of the different dynamics. And that is both the blessing and the curse when you've got this, right? I'll move these neighbor cards out of the way. But, you've got the tending over here with this. You've got the mining and the chopping. And all of them kind of require a lot of your attention to get significant progress on any of them. And so a smorgasbord of things is going to leave you desiring and wanting and reaching and just hoping for one more action combo turn situation that you can link together. And so if that is your Euro excitement, this game has it. The question, and again, this is from my limited plays of about half a dozen games at this point, how many of these can you actually do? How many of these are necessary? Because, again, you've got the farming, you've got the fencing that you have to put the animals down, but you can't put enough of those down and still do some of the other things. And so you are spread very, very thin in this game in these different areas as you're optimizing, right? And so that's the question. Are you spread too thin? Because I feel like when I focus on one area, I am seriously neglecting some of the other areas. And I can't say if that's just me being bad at games in general like this from a Euro optimization standpoint, or if it is almost too much going on in that way. I like some of the mitigation with the fishing lures and the increased area and the upgrading of the amount of actions if you can get the upgraded main action, recipes unlocked, if you will. But things like the trellis, things like the fences for the animals, I just go, is it one thing too many? Because inevitably, I almost feel like I don't have enough comboing able to be done to be able to maximize it. Or if you watch the gameplay example, I didn't focus in the first couple rounds there on growth whatsoever. So this area over here was completely empty, which meant I wasn't really getting resources. But that is, truth be told, where the main amount of points are going to come, because that's going to fill up this cargo manifest the quickest comparatively. The chopping and mining is going to give you some of this stuff in the projects and the badges, which are additional victory points. It's going to give you some of the upgrades over here, but this is the point scoring thing. And so how much of both is sort of the question. Pro in that sense is I like the mitigation. You could see some of the combo driven aspects with unlocking the energy bar, being able to score it, being able to get the second action, on the bottom of the card in that way when I did that on the gameplay. But at the same time, the con is going to be a few of those things, right? The main con has to be this little scratch board if you're looking for more of a Euro optimized roll and write. Because you just don't know what you're going to get. You don't know if it's going to upgrade. You don't know if it's going to draw again. You don't know if you're going to hit those little black lines. And this is probably the most finicky part of this, is you can see that these black lines, you're really scratching with this huge, metal coin perspective. And the problem is you're really scratching and you can't start to see the black line until you're in the next area next door there. And then you're already kind of spoiling it. So it's a very difficult thing not to have happen when you're doing this. And again, maybe it's just my clumsy fat fingers are, doing that as a whole, but that happens. And if you're not paying close enough attention, that black line can be easily missed about how far it's going down or over or around. And so you can start to see how it kind of can blend in there. So that, in the combination of also not knowing, you still are being a little bit more tactical in this than I think some people would like to be, in the luck-driven aspect of what you're getting and which ways you can go. Because if you're trying to go straight down and all of a sudden the thick black line is there, as opposed to if you started on the side, that can really be detrimental. And again, it gives you some mitigation with the top cards of the next action rounds being up, and I used that to my advantage one time. But some of these also, in just the order that they're going to come out in season 1 or even season 2, it's just not going to be possible. I mean, if you have a trellis come out in the first round, well, a trellis is going to take you, for example, 2 wood and a coin to even unlock. And so if that comes out in the first round, there's no way you're going to get this second action, which again is fine. If 2 mining level, if that's in the first round, that's going to be very difficult. If you just don't go for the ones that come out in the later seasons, 2 animals owned, well, you're going to need tons of fences in order to fence them in the first place. Or, 9 tiles with mining goods. If this comes out at the beginning of round, 7 or 6, whenever season 2 starts, then that you're just going to be SOL. It's just not going to work for you. So there's some randomization of that, because also the blessing curse of this is that there are tons of these. There is a huge plethora of those, just massive amounts of all of those action cards. So you're not going to have to, worry about replayability in the sense that, yeah, you're going to have different things come out each time, but you're also going to have no clue which ones are coming out, so you don't know what your strategy is really going to look like. So the variability and the replayability is there, but the control, if you're looking for that as more of the Euro style of being able to strategically plan on the multiple areas that are present on both sheets, well, then that could leave you a little bit feeling, high and dry. The other aspect is, as much as I like the unlocking of the other fishing areas and the geode here, they're also not going to be used hardly at all. Because you're going to be lucky if you get unlocking 1 fishing area, and if you find the geode, great, but chances are you're also not going to find the geode in this huge, massive, sprawling scratch off that's there in the first place. And so that's great and all, but if I can't ever utilize it, it reminds me almost a little bit in a way of like Zombicide, when they've got these super ultimate, super mega awesome powers unlocked at level 5, and none of your games ever make it to that point whatsoever. So that can be a little frustrating. Also, as you saw the gameplay, some of the lower level stuff really doesn't fill in. You really have to go for some of the higher level stuff fast, and it's harder to get. and the cargo manifest is going to be the main way you're going to be scoring points later on and getting more actions along with the badges. So it definitely ramps up as you're going, but how good of a ramp up player are you? Because it's not really an engine build in that way, but it's an unlock to unlock to unlock to unlock situation. And you can have some of that, especially with those later season 2 and season 3 multi-action cards, which is cool when it does happen. I could see the neighbor cards also being a little bit divisive, in terms of, again, which ones you get and which ones you don't get. And again, maybe you just have to strategize that way and go for that immediately so you can get some of those bonuses. But I actually kind of like them. It reminds me of my kids game Quest Kids, where if you give somebody else a resource that they need in order to defeat a monster, you get to draw, a kind kid card, and it gives you a big bonus. And so I like this concept of incentivizing, especially if it's a resource that I'm kind of meh on. And so I really like that aspect. And actually, I think it works really well in the solo game as well. It's not like a completely different element. You just mark off boxes. And so from that aspect, I really like it. Now, again, the scratch offs I mentioned at the very beginning, don't worry. They say they're doing some app version of it. So I would argue that maybe the app version is a little bit more, or less, I guess I should say, potential for peeking in on squares that you maybe didn't want to peek in on in the first place. And there also addresses the replayability. Although, I have a huge stack of this, and you can play this game simultaneously with as many people as you want. And you'd have to play this game dozens of times to run out of these. So at the same time where people might say that this is a concern, it's not really a concern in my book either. Similarly, the season cards, I have no real concern about the scoring of the season card issues. I mean, you go towards what is presented to you, and that works. It does make it more strategic if a couple of these are available to you, and, a couple of them aren't in that way of the 5 that it gives you in this. But again, your mileage may vary. Would it be better, in your opinion, to have all of them available and choose? You'd have more strategic control, but it'd be less tactical in the sense of, this is what you give me, and I take what is given to me, and I utilize it the best. And so I think that is ultimately probably the more preferred option in this case, because otherwise I think it becomes too rote, too mechanical in terms of, I do this on my first turn, I do this on my second turn, I do this on my third turn, I do this on my fourth turn, and maybe I splice in one of these when it behooves me. Nope, these are the only 3 you have, these 2 are off the table, and so then this is how you're making applesauce out of those apples right now, everybody having to do it. And so I like that actually being a little bit more limited and not just having every action available, if that makes sense. Again, the last pro and con here with the animals as well as the plants. I like them, but I'd almost feel like one or the other would have been more than enough because of the size of these dice in order to plant them, right? I didn't show you exactly on this, but when you line this up, it actually is a 4x4 square because it's actually just slightly larger, if you're seeing that, than the actual outline itself. So you need a lot of that right there. So for the large ones there, that's 4 tending that you're going to have to do. Or for even the animals, getting them around some of these smaller ones, the 3x3s, the 9s, I mean, that's still having to draw at least, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or so fences. And fences are going to cost you that either the brick or the stone, 4 of them, which could cost you 3 or 4 action turns. So I'm not really sure about the balance aspect from that. I would have been very happy, I think, just having the plants or the animals in this area. And I don't think I would have missed it as much from that aspect. But I know that goes back to the balancing and giving many different options and making people choose and optimize their strategy as a whole. So final thoughts on this. I actually really like it. I was really concerned that I was going to be completely overwhelmed and this was going to be more heavy on the Euro-esque side of things, or the Twilight Imperium roll and write, Twilight Inscription, or even like a Hadrian's Wall aspect of things where it's going to be just so much going on that, I never felt like I was in control. And although I didn't feel like I was totally in control, that's probably me being a bad gamer than anything else. But it was very intuitive in how the actions worked and how the phases came together. Again, probably pros and cons is I'd argue that maybe 1 or 2 of these elements, like with the animals or the trellis over here on the side, I just don't feel as connected to them in terms of some of the mechanics that go along with fencing them in and utilizing them in that way. Just maybe 1 too many things along that way. And the randomness of the scratch offs is going to be a make it or break it for people, I think, as well. Not in terms of the, like I said, the scratching off and the peaking right there, but more in just the randomization that's going to go along with this. Again, I don't mind it because I love me some craziness and some chaos and the tactical apples into applesauce style of things. I can see that being a little bit off-putting to people. The last thing too is the fishing. If you get one of these spots and the fish are just not in the right area, or even with your increased area you get one of those where it's still only the really, really cruddy ones, there's not a whole lot you can do to mitigate that beforehand, and fishing can be a little bit of a gamble in that sense, especially early on in the game. So upgrading it versus utilizing it, sometimes those are the trade-offs and the balances that I think I could see myself having a little bit of harder time with figuring out when and where and how in that sense. So there you go. That is Tend. Those are my thoughts. Those are my opinions. And hopefully that was helpful. A little bit of everything along the way. Let me know what you think. Comments, questions, concerns down below. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe if you made it this far. Thumb it, I guess. And I'll hit you up in the comment section down below. Peace out. Stay classy. Good friends of the channel. I bid you adieu.